Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third DEM I Wonder webinar. DEM has so many services, offerings, programs, and hidden gems that we want to share with all of you. So we're excited to take just a few minutes each week to highlight these features in our weekly webinar. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many exercises have been postponed or canceled. The Utah Division of Emergency Management is hosting a weekly webinar series aimed at providing local emergency managers with relevant content and opportunities to enhance their capabilities. Webinars will be live for Q&A and will be recorded for later viewing on the DEM website and YouTube channel. Most of these webinars will be workshops with a hands-on portion, which will allow emergency managers to test a DEM product or process. Our schedule today will be as follows. We'll start with our ground rules and etiquette. Next, we'll have a brief presentation by Josh Groeneveld and Lindsey Means on Survey123. Following the presentation, there will be a hands-on portion where participants will be encouraged to test out the product or process that was presented. Following the hands-on portion of our program, the presenter will be available for a Q&A session. Following the Q&A, we'll close with a short message about upcoming webinars. The ground rules today are fairly simple. Please mute your line while the presenter is presenting. If you have a question, you may type it in the group chat or unmute at the appropriate time to ask your question. This session is being recorded and will be available on our website for future viewing. Thank you all for your attendance today. And with that, we'll turn the time over to Josh.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Let me figure out how to present. There we go. And we will present that. And yes, there we go. All right. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Groeneveld. I am the GIS coordinator for the Division of Emergency Management. And I'll cover a little bit about what Survey123 is and how you can use that for your jurisdiction. Today we'll specifically focus on damage assessment, but there's more that you can use it for than just that. And after my presentation, Lindsey will be directing the hands-on demo portion. So that will be really exciting to give you a chance to try it out for yourself. So we'll go over a little bit in kind of broad strokes about what Survey123 is and what you can do with it and why it would be beneficial. Damage assessment seems to be one of the most common uses of Survey123 in the emergency management space. So we'll cover how we can use Survey123 in a damage assessment context, and then we'll do the demo. For the demo, you can do it right in a web browser as well. So you don't need to have any apps or any other special anything on any of your devices for our demo. So with that, we'll talk just briefly about what Survey123 is. Survey123 is produced by Esri. They are the makers of the ArcGIS platform, and Survey123 is integrated into the ArcGIS platform. Many of you have access to ArcGIS in your jurisdictions, and anyone who is already using ArcGIS has the ability to leverage Survey123. And we'll kind of cover some of that as we move along. Survey123 itself is designed to be a data capture tool that is form-based. So the form is kind of your focal point for how you're capturing that data, and it's not based on just looking at a map alone. There is an app that is associated with Survey123. The apps work on iOS, Android, Windows, pretty much any device that you could use in the field for field reporting. Survey123 can work with that. And Survey123 can collect data in a disconnected environment where you can capture information on your device without a connection. And then when someone in the field is within range of a cell connection, they can upload the data that they've captured. When you capture data in Survey123, one of the benefits of it is that it's already integrated with the rest of the ArcGIS platform. So you can use the data that you capture in Survey123 in maps or apps or dashboards. You'll get to see a little taste of that in our demo portion. And it's great for capturing information when you want to have a location tied to it, but the location isn't the main thing you want to capture. Especially in a damage assessment context, this is great because you want to capture where damage has happened, but you also want to capture information related to what kind of damage it is and how extensive that damage is. So one of the strengths of Survey123 is that you can adapt it to be as simple or as complex as you need it to be. So you're not limited to only a super basic form if that doesn't give you the information that you want. And it's not so complex that you have to do a lot of processing or anything on the front end to get your data to work the way you want it to. It's really adaptable, and I think pretty flexible to meet the needs that you might come across. So one of the benefits in terms of what Survey123 can do is that as you set up a form, you can provide a little bit of data validation. And this is meaningful if you're trying to work with the data after it's been captured, where Survey123 can look at a question that is designed to capture, for example, someone's email address. And if the format of the question doesn't look like a valid email address, it will return an error before the data is even submitted. So some of the things that could drive a GIS person like me crazy when you're trying to look at the data, Survey123 can kind of handle some of those things at the user input end of it to try to capture the data that you need in a consistent way. And I think that data consistency has proven really beneficial in a lot of the jurisdictions that I've seen leveraging Survey123 through all of the many disasters we've gone through this year. Another thing that's really cool about Survey123 is that you can allow a Survey123 form to send out to your constituents in the community to capture data from what the public is seeing in an incident context. And that's been really beneficial. I'll show you a couple of examples as we move along. But the ability to kind of crowdsource some of that damage assessment information while also being able to bring that data into the systems that you're already using is really powerful. And I think that's one of the primary benefits of leveraging a tool like this is just the simplicity that you can use to send it out to your constituents in the public and get information from them. Survey123 is also really good at capturing photos, particularly when an incident is happening. The situational awareness that we're all chasing after is really imperative. And I think giving either your workers in the field, if you have a field team in your jurisdiction, or if you're looking for information from the public, being able to capture those photos really gives you a lot clearer picture of the extent of what's happening. The little screenshot that you're looking at right now is a map that I put together internally based on Survey123 data that was captured after our September windstorm. Davis County, Salt Lake County, and Salt Lake City, among others, were leveraging Survey123 to capture public damage assessment reports. And the data was all captured using Survey123, and then it was really easy to take that data and compile it on a map like this and have the photos be visible so that anyone looking at it could get an idea of what the extent of the damages were. Another interesting feature of Survey123 that I just wanted to mention in kind of broad strokes was that Survey123 can also do some calculations internally in the form. So as an example, if you were collecting damage assessment information and you had a value for a structure and you wanted to calculate how much the damage was at that structure, you could set up a question in Survey123 that would have the building value and an estimated damage percentage as a separate question, and then Survey123 can automatically calculate what that potential damage could be. Often when we're in the initial onset of an incident, one of the questions that we get asked at all levels is, how bad is it? And having some of that information captured in an easy to use way can help us answer some of those questions in terms of how bad or how extensive the damage might be. So if we talk about damage assessment specifically, these are some screenshots of the forms that Davis County and Salt Lake City had put together for the windstorm. There were other jurisdictions that were collecting damage assessment using Survey123 for the windstorm. There were several other forms that had been leveraged in the spring for the Magna earthquake. And I had seen a number of damage assessment type forms when COVID got ramped up in the spring as well. And so there's lots of different options. I wanted to give you a brief little taste of that today. Survey123 is customizable in the sense that, you know, as you can see from these two screenshots, the forms do not have to look the same. You don't have to necessarily ask the same questions. If there's information that makes sense for your area that may not make sense in another, you can create the form to answer the questions that are relevant to you. And that's, I think, one of the great benefits of Survey123 in terms of being able to really tailor the forms to fit your needs so that you can get the most use out of them. In terms of damage assessment, I think there are 3 easy ways that you could leverage Survey123 today. One of those options is that many of you have access to GIS staff within your jurisdiction, whether you're a county or a city, and you can work with them to build a form that meets your needs based on whatever damage assessment information is most relevant to you. If you do have access to your own GIS staff, but you want to have kind of a head start in terms of what the form could look like, we have a couple of templates that I'll share links to that you can use. So your GIS staff could take our templates and download those templates and create a new form in your organization that you could then customize to meet your needs. On the other hand, if you don't have access to your own GIS staff, or maybe you aren't sure if you have access to GIS staff and you just need something simple that you can use right now, those same template forms that we have available are open and publicly accessible. And if you needed a form for an incident today that you wanted to leverage, you could just start using that right away. And we would work with you to make sure that you would have access to that data as it comes in. So I want to stress that you don't need to have your own GIS resources to be able to leverage this. You can do this right now without having to do any of that. And if there were a situation where you didn't have access to your own GIS resources and you needed some help from us at DEM, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or work through your liaison, and we can try to come up with a solution that will work for you. We've seen this year in the incidents that we've gone through that capturing good damage assessment data is really key to helping us at the state and others in your community understand what's going on. And so we want to help that process be as smooth as possible. One of the things that we know is out there is that when we're thinking of damage assessment, there are lots of different FEMA requirements for the information that they're looking for. For some incidents, we might be looking at trying to get disaster assistance through the Small Business Administration as well. And so it's certainly worth considering if the data that you're capturing will work in those contexts. I think one of the things that we've seen play out in both the earthquake and the windstorm was a large need from FEMA to us to understand kind of what the impact of the disaster is in terms of how bad is it, and in the context of community lifelines that we've been going through in the since FEMA rolled that out. This is kind of the, like, so what? How bad is it? And I think if you are able to leverage a Survey123 form to capture photos, that can really help drive that narrative in terms of what that impact is on your community. We know that there are FEMA programs covering public assistance for damages to public infrastructure like roads and bridges and culverts, as well as FEMA programs for individual assistance related to damages to individual properties. And we've also seen through the Small Business Administration impacts to businesses within the community. And so I think if one of the key things, if you're to take away from this in terms of what do I need to do to set up my form and what does my form need to capture, I think it's really imperative to capture photos so that you can help both us at the state and FEMA or whoever needs to know what's going on to really understand the impact of why that disaster has had a negative effect on your community. So I think photos are very important. Certainly there's a need for estimating cost in terms of like how much does this damage cost and what would it cost to put that back together. And also we've seen through incidents this year a need to capture data on impact to households. It's one thing to say that you had some flooding that impacted 5 to 10 households, but if it impacted 100 households, that's a much more impactful statement. And sometimes I had reached out to our mitigation recovery section for some guidance on this, and they had responded to me that if you have like an apartment building or something like that where there's multiple households in a building, that's also worth capturing in terms of how many households does that affect. Because that can help drive that narrative to FEMA in terms of, what does this mean for the community? So that's another key element that you would want to consider as you're leveraging Survey123 to capture that damage assessment information. And then of course you'd want to have information on like, what is this? What type of facility is it? If you're looking at damages to private residences, there are considerations for damages to primary residences versus secondary homes or cabins. So if you're able to capture that information, that is also useful. So those are some considerations for how you might be able to meet some of the FEMA requirements. And once you've got your damage assessment form prepared and you're ready to send it out, it's definitely worthwhile working with your public information team to promote that on your social media channels. Salt Lake County and Davis County especially were doing this. I think Salt Lake City may have as well. But it increases participation when people in the community can see you reaching out to them to say, like, we're looking for information. Please send us what's going on so that we can understand the extent of this. And I think it's worth noting this kind of second post on this screenshot where Salt Lake County was reminding everyone that if a member of the public was submitting a damage assessment response through their Survey123 form, it wasn't necessarily like getting a work crew assigned to come clean up any debris. It was just for information tracking and coordinating resources. And I can't remember offhand how many responses Salt Lake County had from sending this out, but it was several hundred. And I think that was really beneficial for them as they tried to do their size up of how they needed to effectively respond to the windstorm. And if you do have access to your GIS staff within your jurisdiction, there are some Fema templates within Survey123 that you can also leverage. One kind of point of clarification is that these Fema templates are geared toward the FEMA requirements for a preliminary damage assessment in the public assistance or individual assistance process. So these forms in the FEMA templates are quite lengthy. They're very detailed and very useful, but that would be kind of what I would classify as an advanced level use of this. So if you're just kind of getting started with this, I wouldn't worry about this today, but I felt like it was worth mentioning that this is out there and available if you have access to your own GIS resources to use this. The easy way to do this, whether you're working with your GIS staff or if you're just trying to stand something up on your own, there are a couple of forms that we have created at DEM that you can use today. One of these forms is designed to be leveraged by members of the public. So that would be an easy way that you could send something out like in that social media post to get information from your constituents on what's going on. And then the second form, what we're calling the Situation and Damage Assessment form, was originally created and I think is still available from our mitigation recovery section as a Google document. I think sometimes that has been sent out for various instant responses. And that Situation and Damage Assessment form would be geared more for you and your jurisdiction as you're trying to understand the impact of your community and then report that extent up to the state. You can use that right now. Today it's up and running. And if any of you are interested in leveraging these forms, we're more than happy to accept any feedback you have. So if you look at these forms and maybe there are some elements that you think are missing or ways that we could improve the data capture on them, please let us know. We're happy to try to work with you to make sure that these forms capture the information that you need. So it's worth stating again that if you do not have access to your own GIS resources within your community, you can still leverage this to get information using this form that we have available, and then we can work with you to make sure that you have access to the damage data as it comes in. If you need help with any of this, of course, you're more than welcome to contact us. All of the slides and everything will be made available to you today, so that you don't have to write down our emails. But Lindsey and I and everyone else at DEM are more than happy to work with you to make sure we can support you in the best way possible. So that concludes kind of our presentation portion. I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Lindsey for the hands-on demo.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have any quick questions before we continue on? Any questions for Josh or? Okay, we will take questions at the end as well, but I'll just go ahead and jump in. So we just wanted to show really quickly kind of how simple this really can be. You don't have to be super tech savvy and all of that to be able to do this. So this is just a demo. I did not put together a full damage assessment just because I wanted it to be pretty simple for us to be able to fill one out as an example here today. So, but just to show you kind of how it works, if you pull up the Survey123, you can come here And this is one that I've put together. Like I say, you just click on it, you can add, and these are kind of your options of just fields that you can add. Again, very simple to just pop in. You can change the appearance if you want all of your surveys to kind of follow a certain theme or color or anything like that. You can change those as well. So just very easy to design what you want it to be and what you want it to look like. There are ways that you can change, as you can see here, to choose different ways that you want those questions to appear to whoever is filling out this survey. So you can do multiple choice, you can do, you know, drop down grids, things like that. So lots and lots of options. It can get more complicated than that. There are ways that you can, you know, prompt things where based on a certain answer, another set of questions will pop up, and, you know, a lot more complicated things, but very, very simple to just throw together an easy survey that you want the public to fill out, or any of your other partners. There are ways that you can share it. Josh did touch on this a little bit, so you can make it available to the public through a web browser, or you can do it through the Survey123 app. If you have, just say, maybe some of your own employees or some of your local partners that are going to be filling it out more frequently and you want them to do it through the app, you can do that as well. There are also ways that you can lock a survey down, because if we make it public to everyone, then anyone that has Esri and Survey123 can view and submit to that survey. But there are ways that you could lock it down using a passcode and things like that, and then whoever you have filling out that survey just puts in the correct password, and that's how they can submit the survey. So lots of different ways that you can customize it to fit the way you want it to do. So I am going to actually copy this, and I'm going to put this in the chat so that everyone here can actually just fill that out. You can either click on it, or I'm going to open this on the screen here, and you should be able to see that, and just open up your camera on your phone, and your camera will scan that, and you can fill it out on your phone as well. So either way you would like to fill that out. I'll give you just a minute to get that going. And then I also created a dashboard, and we'll go into the dashboard here more in a minute, but I just want to pull the dashboard up so that you can all see, as these are getting filled out, how that dashboard updates. I'll give just another minute to anybody that wants that QR code. Okay. So here is our dashboard, very simple. Okay, so I'm going to hit refresh a couple times here just because we've got a few more coming in. It will refresh on its own if you have it set up that way, but just because we're working within a time restraint here, we'll get it refreshed. I don't know why my calculations are not adding up here, and maybe Josh can answer that. Yeah, 300 billion.
Lindsay, while we're waiting for some more data to come in, a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Josh mentioned photos that people can upload. Are those available to the general public to view, or just you as the ArcGIS user?
So that would be just us as the ArcGIS user. As that comes in, that data can be analyzed. So if we come back to the Survey123 page here, I can analyze all of the data, and I can see all the responses that are coming in from everyone by categories. And then you can also export that data. So I could take it and export it as like an Excel file if I needed to send that to an external partner or anything like that. We can download that and send it off. So the way those are coming in is those photos are actually coming in down here. I don't know if anybody actually did submit a photo. Chris did. He's waving his hands.
I submitted a couple.
Great. So I can scroll down here and we can start to see all of the photos. Awesome. That are coming in. So that starts to give us an idea. Another way to view that, though, that I prefer for like an EOC type incident would be to see those. Sorry, so many tabs here. On our dashboard. So if I come back here to the dashboard, I can actually start to see, this kind of gives good situational awareness. So if there was an earthquake or something like that, I would want to see kind of as these started to clump together where the main impact zone was, right? And then I can click on these individually and start to see the photos. That's one I submitted yesterday up at the state capitol back that I had on my phone before. So that's not what the Capitol looks like right now. But that's kind of how you can start to view these. There are other ways. Again, I just made a very, very simple dashboard. So there are ways that you can create your dashboard to actually have a field that would show the photos and things like that. So, you know, lots of ways that we can, again, customize the dashboard to be whatever you want it to be. For very simple reasons, I just wanted the map to kind of show how I can start to get situational awareness based on the clusters of these assessments coming in, where the main impacts were. Also the total, and you guys knocked it out of the park on this total, as Chris pointed out, 300 billion. So that's awesome. This is calculating based off of everybody's responses coming in. So it's just doing that calculation in the background. I'm not having to go in and do any mathematics with that or anything like that. This is great for decision makers. They like to be able to come into the EOC and see things like that just kind of show them right off the bat a general estimated cost. I also wanted to show you guys just very simply on a dashboard how you can even put layers together. So I can put one over the other. So this actually shows if I want to see total reports. So we had 11 responses come in. And then I also just wanted to break down, because one of the questions was, does that building or home or whatever that you're reporting on, does it have earthquake insurance? And 36.4% of the responses did say that there was insurance on that building. Chris, go ahead with your question.
You know, we had a flooding event. It was a flash flood here about 6 or 7 years ago, and they wanted really quick damage reports and quantify, you know, to see if we were meeting threshold. And there was these big numbers thrown out there. And of that $1 million of our estimate with the landslide and we had a landslide and some power line failures, that really narrowed down to about a third of that. So those initial amounts, I mean, what is the basis? I get you're trying to get an idea, but when it is so far out there, and it's the layperson that's trying to place some kind of a value on the damage, you know, how much are we hoping to get? A 50%, a 70%, or a 20%? Or what's that? That seems very challenging to have people submit the damage estimate.
I agree, and that's gonna really be whatever your driving factor is, right? So if you have just you and your local partners doing this form, that might be a valuable question to ask, right? If you have actual you know, people that are trained to know what a damage cost might be, then it would be beneficial to have that on there. If this was a form that I was just going to send out to the public, I probably wouldn't ask that question, just because I don't think the public really has a knowledge of what those cost breakdowns would actually be. So it wouldn't be a beneficial question. If it was a question that I was not going to ask on the survey, based on my survey is how I build my dashboard. So I start to, you know, ask the questions that I'm going to ask in the survey, and then say, based off of this data that I'm getting, what do I want to see first and foremost? What's the most key points? And that's what I put into a dashboard that help drive my decisions in an EOC. So, and again, this is just an example of a damage assessment form. There are so many different forms that you could be using for different reasons that would drive dashboards to help you make decisions in an EOC. Good. Ray, did you have a question as well?
Not so much a question, just a comment on that. There are different levels of damage assessment. There are those gross, hey, we're just trying to get a feel for how much damage there is. And you might just want to say, is there damage, yes or no, and maybe pictures of it. If you want estimates, again, like you mentioned, Lindsay, you might want to have experts making that assessment. And there's a difference between the damage of private businesses and private homes versus public utilities and public infrastructure. And so there's different kinds of damage assessment you might do.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I think one of the practical examples that we had seen this year, I believe it was related to the windstorm. One of the Survey123 forms that was sent out to a community had questions related to some of the pre-canned damage categories in terms of like minor, major, affected, or destroyed. And there were a few instances throughout the windstorm response where people had they had trees that fell on their car. So when a member of the public went to fill out the form, they said, oh, this tree has crushed my car, therefore my report should say that this is destroyed. But really the survey was intended to capture damage information from like an individual residence. And I think that was one of the interesting little nuances where the jurisdiction that had sent out the form had a dashboard that went with it and had categories on their dashboard to say how many major, minor, or affected structures have we had. But they ended up having to filter out all of the ones that came back with this destroyed category because they were finding some vast inconsistencies in the way that members of the public were reporting it. And I think Chris makes a good point. Like you can tailor your form to be specific about what damage you're looking at. You know, what is the damage to your residence versus what is other damage to your property or outbuildings or whatever you might have. So it's certainly worth considering. And I think I'll turn it back to Lindsay in just a second. I think one of the things that could be beneficial for this, there's a lot of great Fema classes through their independent study training related to the public assistance process. And I think there's a lot of great information in those classes. I'm not sure if any of those classes specifically address Survey123, but I think there's a lot of beneficial information in those classes that could inform the decisions you make in terms of setting up a damage assessment form. So.
Yeah, and just to add on to all of that, there may be even times that you want multiple forms for different reasons, right? So I might want to put out just an additional, a quick form for the public to start filling out, just so I can start to get something in. And then I can make, and have a windshield assessment, just a quick, easy, state employees or local employees or whatever are out filling these out very quickly to get a little bit more information than what I got from that public survey. Then you can start to consider using a more in-depth one similar to the FEMA forms or something like that are much more in-depth and would take longer to start to fill out, but builds upon what you've already done with the prior 2 surveys. And you can then start to layer all of this data together and start to siphon out what you want from each survey. So any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, this is Tracy. So those public surveys might help you pinpoint what neighborhood has been impacted. So you don't have to send your crews to all the neighborhoods. You see really quickly from the public, oh, here's where the majority of the damage is coming from. Let's go there to send my crews.
Correct.
Hey, this is Alan down in Kane County.
Hey, Alan.
Maybe I missed this. Maybe you talked about it at the beginning or something. So is this a program that I need to go out and purchase, or does the state have one I use, or if I have a GIS guy here in the county, he should already have this? I guess maybe I missed that piece. How do I get to this? Where does the program live?
Yeah, Josh, I'll let you take that.
Sure, that's a great question. So if you have a GIS person in your jurisdiction, if your GIS person is using ArcGIS, then they would already have access to Survey123 in some capacity. So it's certainly worth pursuing to try to interface with them to set up a form that you could use yourself. But if you have a need to just have access to a quick and easy form that's open and ready to go, we've got some templates that you could use right away. But we're also willing to work with you and your local GIS person if you want to try to use any of the templates that we have or try to come up with something that meets your needs a little bit better. So there's some options that you have. I think that most of the counties that I'm familiar with around the state do have access to ArcGIS in some capacity. So I believe that access should be there. But if you need more information from that, we can certainly try to help you get access to it, because I think somewhere in your jurisdiction might already have it.
Yeah, I'm sure that my guy uses ArcGIS. So when you say you've got some stuff already ready to go, like it's something that I would be able to access, or I would need to call you and say, hey, I need help putting together a survey. How would that work?
That's a great question. So we've got some pre-canned templates that you can just use, but I think if you're able to work with your GIS person, like we can essentially we can create a template as an Excel file that we can send to your GIS person, and then they can take that Excel file and bring it into their own environment to use. And once you've got that, then you can kind of customize it from there.
Okay, great. I'll get with him first, I guess, and see if he's familiar with it and what he knows.
Awesome.
Any other questions for us? That's the end of the demo as far as I have, so I'll toss it back to Josh and we can close it out there.
I think one thing just to kind of reiterate in closing, so this webinar is being recorded. I'm also going to send Tracy some links to some overview videos that Esri has produced that kind of give you some quick snapshots of what you can do. They've got a number of videos that are kind of tailored for GIS people to go in and do some of the nuts and bolts work with Survey123, but there's also a number of good overview resources that we'll send out to make sure it gets included in all of the materials that are sent out as a result of this webinar. So with that, Tracy, back to you.
Yeah, Thanks, Josh. Just another quick question. Beyond damage assessments, are there other things that you have used this for?
Absolutely. I think we've seen a lot of cool ways to use Survey123 this year. One thing that you could do with Survey123 if you needed to do some sort of like a volunteer management piece, you could use Survey123 as like a check-in form if you needed it. We've done some Survey123 work related to our coronavirus response, where we have some of our field teams that are going out visiting certain facilities throughout their work week and work day, and we have them do a quick little check-in using Survey123 in that manner so that we can just see where they are, just to get some more visibility on what's going on with that. I think I've seen a number of emergency management agencies using Survey123 for a number of different things beyond like volunteer and donations. I've seen some of the states around the country have set up Survey123 forms for some of their PPE requests, where that you know, a person can make a PPE request and then it goes to their distribution center to get vetted and fulfilled that way. I think locally, if any of you are looking for like local examples of really good uses of Survey123, Peter Quittner at Utah County has been working with his GIS person really extensively in the past several months, and they've set up a number of Survey123 forms to track a lot of their data points that have been valuable to them throughout the coronavirus response and the earthquake and everything else. So it's not just getting used at the state level, and I think Utah County has been a great example of how it's being done locally. I've also seen some really cool uses of Survey123 from some of the GIS team up in Weber County. They've done a lot of cool stuff, and I think they had set up a Survey123 form in the initial onset of the coronavirus response related to impacts on businesses. So they were trying to get ideas from or input from businesses in terms of like, how bad is this for you? And they sent that out that way. So there's a lot of cool examples. If you need, you know, more specific links to any of this, I can try to find that for you. But there's a lot more that you can do with Survey123 than just damage assessment. It just seems like in an emergency management context, damage assessment is one of the easiest things to get up and running with.
All right, thank you, Josh. As mentioned, Josh is going to be sharing some links, and those will be in the description of the video when the video is posted no later than noon tomorrow. So thank you, Josh and Lindsey, for your presentation today. As a reminder, this webinar and all other webinars in this series will be available on the DEM website at dem.utah.gov/exercises. Our webinar next week will be I Wonder where I can find useful PSAs or preparedness videos that I can share with my residents. If you have any I Wonder topic suggestions, please reach out to me at tbodley@utah.gov to have your topic added to our calendar. We're always excited to help you explore and get to know all that DEM can offer the emergency management community. For now, we'll have a good day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.